Lagos, they were the couple everyone wished to be like. Girls would sigh, "God, when?" But behind the smiles and luxury, her perfect husband was a devil in disguise. Sandra had always believed that hard work and ambition were her wings. She didn't come from wealth, but she had discipline, dreams, and fire. She had fought for every scholarship, every promotion, every seat at every boardroom table. She used to say, "No man can derail me. I've already built my path." Then Kelvin walked into her life. Kelvin Okoye, the oil magnate, whose name carried weight like thunder in Lagos circles. The tall, smooth-talking billionaire with dimples that could disarm anger and a voice that poured like melted chocolate. He was as polished as Eco-Atlantic and as generous as the rain. At first, he was everything women fasted and prayed for. Weekend trips to Dubai, luxury shopping sprees in Victoria Island and Abuja, private beachfront dinners where he whispered, "You'll never lack as long as I breathe." Once, he dropped the keys of a red Mercedes-Benz GLC into her palm and said, "Sandra, baby, I want people to see the kind of queen I walk beside." Her mother, Mama Ejiro, smiled weakly but later said, "My daughter, remember too much honey can choke a person." But Sandra was already in love. Kelvin never forgot her work presentation dates. He drove her to church. He carried her handbag like it was made of gold. Everywhere they went, he proudly introduced her as, "Sandra, my future wife, the smartest woman I know." So when he proposed, she said yes with her whole chest. The evening before their traditional wedding in Ikeja, Kelvin came to her apartment with his cousin Kene. His designer cologne filled the space before he even sat down. He wrapped her in a possessive hug that lingered too long. "Tomorrow, you become mine forever," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. She giggled softly. "I'm already yours." But his tone shifted barely, just enough for something in her chest to tighten. "Not yet," he murmured. "After tomorrow, you belong to me completely. No more late-night calls, no random chats. After 10, your phone is for me only. Understood?" Sandra blinked, half smiling. "It's just Anita calling to gist sometimes." "She's my friend now." Kelvin's smile lingered, but his eyes didn't match it. "Wives don't need midnight friends. If anyone needs you after 10, they can talk to me first. That's how it should be." She hesitated, laughing nervously. "You sound serious." "I am," he said, still calm. "When I love something, I protect it, and I don't share what's mine." She laughed it off, telling herself it was just wedding jitters. He was being protective, that's all. As she drifted to sleep, she whispered, "Tomorrow will be perfect." But somewhere deep down, the way he said mine echoed longer than she wanted it to. The wedding hall in Lekki Phase 1 was alive with drums that made the chairs vibrate. Bright Ankara fabrics shimmered like flowing water. Aso Ebi ladies danced with pride. Chiefs, family, friends from Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, everyone came. But Sandra was late. Her makeup artist had shown up almost 3 hours behind schedule due to Lagos traffic. By the time Sandra stepped gracefully out of the white Prado, her gele high like a crown and her beads glowing like fire, the sun was already dipping. The crowd erupted in joy as she walked in. Cameras flashed. Ululations filled the air. People shouted, "Our bride is fine-y." Kelvin smiled as she reached him, but his smile had no warmth. He took her hand, squeezed too tightly, then, still smiling for the cameras, he bent to her ear and whispered, his voice filled with quiet irritation, "So, this is how you embarrass me. Do you know how many millions I spent on this wedding? You kept me waiting like a groom in a movie. Many women would give anything to be in your place right now, and you're taking me for granted." Her heart skipped. but she forced a laugh. I'm sorry, love. Makeup issues. Lagos traffic. Kelvin smiled wider for the crowd, teeth flashing, voice smooth. It's fine, he said, still whispering. Just don't make a habit of keeping me waiting. Sandra brushed it off as wedding nerves. He was under pressure, she told herself. It was his big day too. She didn't know that beneath that charming smile, Kelvin was already hiding another secret one that would turn her perfect marriage into an illusion. The morning after the wedding felt too quiet. Sandra woke up in Kelvin's Banana Island mansion, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt a little too still. The king-sized bed was soft, the air smelled of expensive diffusers, and sunlight spilled gently through the silk curtains. Kelvin was already at the breakfast table, dressed neatly, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, smiled, and said, "My beautiful wife." She smiled back. He walked over, kissed her forehead, and said, "I hope you slept well, Mrs. Okoye." It all seemed normal, sweet even. But as she walked past his chair, her eyes caught something on his phone screen, a message preview, just a few words before he locked it. "Last night was unforgettable. When will I see you again?" Her smile faltered for half a second, but Kelvin quickly pocketed the phone, pouring her juice like nothing happened. She told herself she imagined it. Maybe it was an old message. She wanted to believe that. Weeks passed. Kelvin remained the dream husband everyone envied, thoughtful, generous, always by her side at events, always smiling in public. But in private, he was distant. Late-night calls became frequent. Business, he'd say. Trips out of town appeared suddenly. Oil meetings, he'd explain. Once, Sandra woke up at 2 a.m. and noticed he wasn't in bed. She tiptoed downstairs and saw him in the study, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and playful. "Don't worry, baby. She's asleep." Her heart clenched. The air around her turned heavy. She quietly walked back to bed, pretending she hadn't heard. The first real confirmation came through someone she least expected, Anita. One afternoon, Anita rushed into her office in Victoria Island, face pale and angry. "Sandra, you need to see this." She handed her a phone. On the screen was a viral blog post. Billionaire Kelvin Okoye, spotted with mystery woman in Abuja. The photo showed Kelvin in a white shirt, holding hands with a woman in sunglasses. The caption read, "Sources say they checked into the same hotel." Sandra felt the world spin. Her throat tightened, but she smiled weakly and said, "Maybe it's just paparazzi drama. You know how blogs lie." But deep down, she knew. That evening, when Kelvin came home, she tried to stay calm. She showed him the article and asked gently, "What is this?" He chuckled. "Sandra, please. You believe blogs now? Anyone can Photoshop a picture. You know how people envy us." He kissed her forehead and said, "Don't let them get into your head, okay? You're my only woman." She wanted to believe him. She really did. A month later, they attended a charity gala at a luxury hotel in Victoria Island. Kelvin was his usual charming self greeting dignitaries, shaking hands, laughing. But something felt off. During the event, Sandra excused herself to the restroom. On her way back, she heard soft giggles near the corridor leading to the VIP lounge. She stopped. The voice sounded familiar. Kelvin's voice. She peeked through the half-open door. There he was, standing close, too close to a woman in a red gown. His hand rested casually at her waist as he whispered something that made her blush. Sandra froze. Her heart dropped to her stomach. He noticed her reflection in the glass behind the woman and quickly pulled back, forcing a smile. "Babe, there you are," he said, walking toward her. "I was just thanking a donor." The woman smiled politely and left. Sandra nodded slowly. "Of course you were." The rest of the night, She barely heard the music. The days that followed were filled with silence. Sandra stopped asking questions. She went through the motions: work, dinner, bed. Kelvin kept smiling, but his phone never left his side. She started noticing perfume that wasn't hers, lip gloss on his shirt collar that wasn't her shade. One morning, she found a gold earring wedged under the car seat. Not hers either. Her chest ached, but she said nothing. The silence between them had grown thick, too heavy to cut through with questions that would only be met with lies. Kelvin had changed in the blink of an eye. The man who once held her hand in traffic, who sent her morning prayers and carried her heels after parties, now felt like a stranger wearing his face. His laughter had turned mechanical, his tenderness rehearsed. He was still beautiful, still charming to the world, but to Sandra, he had become a ghost of the man she fell in love with. One night, when he claimed he had a business trip to Port Harcourt, she called the driver to confirm. The driver hesitated, then said quietly, "Madam, Oga, no travel-o. He say, make I drop him for Echo Hotel." Sandra's voice trembled. "Echo Hotel? Alone?" The driver hesitated again. "He no alone, ma." That was the night her heart truly broke, not from shock, but from confirmation. When Kelvin returned the next morning, humming like a man with no worries, he found Sandra at the dining table, calm, dressed, suitcase beside her. He smiled, confused. "Travelling somewhere?" She looked up at him, her face gentle but firm. "Yes, away from the noise." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said softly, "I'm done pretending I'm the only one." Kelvin's charm faltered. "Sandra, please, don't start with this again. You're overreacting." She stood. "I'm reacting exactly the way a woman should when she finally realizes her love was never enough for a man addicted to attention." He tried to laugh it off, stepping closer. "Come on, babe. You know you're the one I love. The others, they mean nothing." She shook her head. "If they mean nothing, then why do they exist at all?" Silence. She picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door. He didn't follow. Maybe he thought she'd come back like most women always did. Maybe he didn't believe she had the strength. But this time, Sandra did not look back. Months passed. Sandra moved into a small apartment in Surulere, close to her mother. She returned to work, focused, calm, no longer checking her phone every hour. She joined a support circle for women rebuilding after betrayal. She started journaling again. She smiled more easily. One afternoon, as she walked past a roadside florist, she paused red roses in full bloom. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Never again." That night, she opened her laptop and began drafting an article titled, "When Love Lies, Why Peace is Better Than Luxury." It went viral. Women wrote to her, thanking her for her honesty. Some said it gave them courage to leave relationships that drained them. Sandra realized her story had a purpose, not revenge, but revelation. A few weeks after her article went viral, there was a knock on Sandra's door. When she opened it, Kelvin stood there, thinner, tired, the glow of arrogance gone from his eyes. "Sandra," he said softly, "you look different, peaceful." She didn't invite him in, but she didn't close the door either. He took a deep breath. "I've been a fool. I lost everything that mattered because of pride. The other women, they meant nothing. You were the only one who ever saw me, the real me. I've changed, Sandra. Please, give me one more chance." Tears filled his eyes, but Sandra stood calm, steady, like the woman she had become. "Kelvin," she said gently, "I don't hate you anymore. I just don't belong in that story anymore." He blinked, confused. "So that's it?" She smiled faintly. "Yes, I've already forgiven you, but forgiveness doesn't mean return. It means peace." Kelvin lowered his head. The silence between them was no longer heavy with anger, but with acceptance. He whispered, "You're really done." Sandra nodded. "Completely. I wish you healing, but my chapter with you is closed." He turned and walked away slowly, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Sandra closed the door, exhaled deeply, and whispered to herself, "I choose myself again." Then she smiled, picked up her pen, and began writing her next article. When closure knocks, don't open the door. Moral of the story: love built on lies will always crumble, no matter how expensive the foundation. A true partner will protect your peace, not play with your trust. A beautiful relationship without honesty is just a decorated prison. Sandra's story reminds us, cheating is not a mistake, it's a choice. A woman's worth isn't tied to a man's loyalty. Walking away from deceit isn't loss, it's liberation. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can say is, "I choose myself."